I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything.
All right, enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
What? Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong? Disconnect.
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Emotionally peaking. All biorhythms in sync, aligned with Jupiter and Mars, pegging the IQ needle in the red zone at 138. Well, that's not mine. But every once in a while, with a sentence or two, I can hit it. It's a lot to have you here. This is The Doctor Is In. This is the Friday variant of The Doctor Is In. Look Back Friday. Concept that came up with in my consulting with Ave Maria Radio. My producer, man, Andrew Kruchek, the load has fallen on him mostly for Look Back Friday. All I got to do is point out the particular calls that we want to use as look back material. He is the one responsible for editing them, putting them into an easy listening format, which to my dismay oftentimes includes taking me out of the call. And I've asked him, I said, why don't you leave me in a little more? He says, no. I said, this is better this way. All right, well, he's the boss there, so good enough. We'll get to the calls from Carl and Bob and Rose and Tom. Sounds like a movie. Carl, Bob, Rose, and Tom. After my opening monologue here, what do I want to talk about? Let me turn and look and see. Oh, yeah. Recently, I had a client tell me that her middle daughter was at a well-known Catholic college. And one of the things that was happening there was a huge uptick. I don't even know if it's an uptick. I think it was a surge in smoking among the kids. Not vaping, actual smoking, like the old days, you know. And I've often said in some of my books, I'll say, well, there's only really 3 sins left in our culture. Smoking, spanking, and having more than 1.86 children in marriage. Well, now I'm not even sure if I can say among the young people that smoking is a sin. And I asked her about the details on this. I said, what is this? She goes, well, she confessed that her daughter also periodically was smoking, and she grew up totally against smoking. That was, the sin, smoking. But the peer group is being pushed along. And she pointed out to me that it wasn't just this college. It's indicative of what's going on among the youth, that there has been this upswing in tobacco use, particularly smoking, among the young people. The question becomes, what is fueling this? One explanation, I think it's the main one, is somehow, some way, the peer group has this kind of momentum. Look back on things. Who would have guessed that 20 years ago, virtually a majority of kids in their 18 to 30-year-old age range would have tattoos? And not just a little tattoo, not just like the guys from World War II that had the anchor on their forearm from the service. No, these are billboard tattoos. The only thing to account for that is this social sweeping, pulling everybody along. That somehow, some way, this is all just cool now. And I think there can be a legitimate argument made for the transgender movement. 20, 30 years ago, this was unheard of. all of a sudden it exploded. I've seen surveys that said as much as 30% of kids in the late teen age range did not call themselves heterosexual. Some variant otherwise. One needs to ask the question, what is sweeping this along? A classic example of the experts recognizing, but I think in the whole gender confusion issue, they have denied it, but recognizing the force of peer influence. Tragically, there have been more suicides among high school kids. We're at an all-time high. Isn't that interesting? We live in a culture that materially anyway, and in so many respects has benefits beyond anything anybody could comprehend in human history, but a moral decline and the family decline is a major factor in their disenchantment, their depression, their discontentment, their anxiety, and their suicidal ideation. So when someone, or maybe someone's in a high school commits suicide, recently we had a several tragic burst of kids killing themselves in one high school. And they swarmed the high school with counselors. Why? Because they recognize that kids are influenced by the behavior of their peers, even something that extreme. They acknowledged that this could influence these kids who maybe would have had ideation to act upon it, which has perplexed me because many in the mental health world have ignored the social influence on so many of gender confusion, of declaring I'm in the wrong body. They just assume it's automatic, not influenced by anything other than this person's soul, internal state. I don't know where this cigarette upswing is going to go. I know that cigarettes are a classic example of how if a society turns on a particular behavior, it can suppress that behavior. That's common. Society swings rapidly. And we now have the ability to influence millions at a time. Millions upon millions at a time. Nobody in human history ever had this ability to do this. Go back 150 years ago, our presidents didn't. They had to make decisions, and as the decision percolated through the people, it made its movement in a certain direction. But now, whoa, you can shift people's minds, you can shift their behavior in a matter of minutes by the millions. It caught me by surprise. I was not aware of this, and she said, yes, she was shocked. It's the new thing now. And this particular place where her daughter is what you would consider a very traditional Catholic education, with kids attending there, coming from homes and places where you would think that they would have viewed taking care of your body importantly. But the peer influence apparently swamped the way they were raised, at least where smoking is concerned. As a psychologist, when I was in grad school, the standard thing was adolescents are sheep. Adolescents are radically moved by what gains momentum in the peer group. That was Psych 101. It was just something you took for granted, especially when I got out of grad school and I went to a mental health center and I worked with adolescents. I always remembered that. I said, oh, okay, look for where he's hanging. Who's he hanging with? What's he being exposed to among the peer group? How is it influencing him? Very easily shifted in mindset and conduct by peers. That's why it surprised me so much when the gender confusion started and gained a lot of momentum, that there were very few voices talking about, is there a peer influence here? Is there something here that has gained momentum as kind of a new thing? Almost in every other way, we recognize how adolescents can be moved by the peer swaying. When we're denying that in certain aspects of their decisions, their conduct, their leanings, the question needs to be asked, why? Why? Why are we not looking into the peer influence more?
Welcome to Advanced Dentistry Center family. This is Dr. Mehdi, and our team strives to treat you like family in a loving and compassionate way as we focus on serving you in a Christ-like manner. We do this by emphasizing prevention and general well-being for a lifetime. Our private practice is small, personal, state-of-the-art, and innovative, with the goal to educate and motivate our patients in improving their oral health. It is through a partnership with you that you will achieve the goals for your smile. Advanced Dentistry is serious about the level of care we provide, with attention to details and an exceptional level of care, skill, and judgment. We are thrilled for the opportunity to serve you.
Dr. Matty and the team invite you to visit them at advanceddentistrycenter.com or call them at 248-594-9592. That's 248-594-9592. AdvancedDentistryCenter.com.
In the hallways of the school where I teach, anxiety is at every turn. The anxiety to get the right grades, to get into the right school with the right career program, to find the right job and then the right spouse. We think it's all up to us, but it isn't. Do we not believe that we inhabit a design, a pattern, created by God at the very beginning? All that is required is that we love and move in His love. Then trust. 17 years ago, one of our sidewalk counselors, Edmund, was involved in helping a woman who had come to the abortion clinic. When the baby was born, she named him Edmund. Many years later, she came to the Guadalupe Workers' office and related how her son Edmund had been supporting the whole family since his parents had been both out of work. She did not realize that the person to whom she told the story was Edmund. GuadalupeWorkers.org.
The unmistakable sound of a Hammond B3. The king of organs in the heyday of the organs and jazz organ. And a lot of what you hear now from the old rocksters in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I never thought I'd say the old in the 90s, had a Hammond. And because Hammonds were made with tubes, and they're old. They're not like the organs that are coming out now. But the Hammonds were the heyday of the organ, and old was better, at least where the Hammonds were concerned. See where we're going to go here. Carl is calling from Michigan. Not surprisingly, his daughter has returned from college, and as he puts it, fighting me on everything.
My wife and I are being beside ourselves now. My daughter came back from Michigan State University for Thanksgiving, and everything I tell her, well, no, that's wrong because blah, 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 blah. You know, I read a book on it and this and that. I mean, there's not a single thing that I say that she doesn't disagree with. And I guess getting this a little more troubling is that when she was even in high school, I've noticed that she was a little bit like, she's not forthcoming. She's not really 100% honest, you know, like, where did you go? You know, my friend's house. Oh, then after that, where did you go? Oh, you know what I mean? It wasn't a lie because, well, that was true. You know, I mean, she's sort of splitting hairs about, you know, when she gives us answers, and you got to ask 3 or 4 more questions, and and I didn't give it too much thought. I just tried to explain to her, as, the years in past that, well, that's not really telling me the whole thing. I got to ask you more questions, I mean, I've been nice, but I'm getting really angry and
Go ahead.
think she buys into the toxic masculinity thing, like, oh, I'm toxic, I'm a toxic masculinity thing.
It sounds like she's buying into a whole lot of stuff.
Oh,
You said it. Now, I don't know if this is Eric's summary of your question or yours, but it says how to bring her back. Was that your question?
Yeah, how to reel her back in if I can. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the only way you can reel her back in is to literally reel her back in. Now, the problem with that is at this point, from what you're saying, it sounds like she's totally convinced that she's finally free of your ways and your thoughts and your ideas and your morals and your politics and everything else that you hold dear. So that if you say, I don't like what college is doing to you and I no longer am going to pay for it, what will she do?
That's the thing. See, I'm not a 4-year college graduate, either is my wife. And therefore, when you apply to FAFSA, that puts you at the top of the list. Because you're probably not, let's say woke and liberal. So they're going to they want to, this is a good, they've got this is their, opportunity for them to convert you, away from your parents. And so that's why she's getting it all paid for by FAFSA.
Totally.
Federal. And I filled out the paperwork because that's part of it. And
what's she majoring in, Carl?
Political science, but she wants to be a lawyer.
Okay. Well, you got several decisions. I can't tell you what to do, but you have several decisions to make. One, you sit back and you just watch this as it unfolds. Mm-hmm. And you watch your daughter pretty much turn her back on the things that you thought were solid, stable, traditional, moral, and work. That's the one. You just let it go, see what happens. 2, you say, well, my dear, I really don't like what's happening to you. I don't know what to do about it because they're much more influential than I am. So I'm really not going to pay for you to lose your faith. I'm not going to pay for you to get a degree there. You can get one in a community college. Now, she'll say, I don't care. I'm getting it all paid for. Well, that's not true. That is not true. She has a phone. Who pays for the phone? She probably has a car, or if she doesn't, she wants a car. There's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things you still pay for.
No, she's got a car. Who
pays for the car?
She does.
She pay for insurance?
She is, yeah. Let me see. Yeah, wait a minute. She's paying insurance. Yeah, she is.
So she is completely emancipated. She does not need you whatsoever at this point.
Right. She's 19, but she that's by design. I says, okay, I'll pay for this. No. She's like, she doesn't want to have any let's say responsibility to listen to me. You see, she doesn't have any of that. The only thing I want to say is that when she comes over here, I've got 2 younger sons, like 17 and 15, and I think she influences them.
I would flat out say that is not to be. And I would not allow her to be alone with those sons if it's my kid.
Okay.
And I would say, if you're going to do that, you can't come back.
Okay.
I had to do that with one of my kids. He was doing things. We said, look, we do not want you saying those things to the younger ones.
Right.
The other thing you got to watch is you don't argue with her. You don't fight with her. You don't argue with her. You don't try to convince her. Forget it.
Okay.
Forget it.
Okay.
Not going to happen. All you do when you do that is you just convince her, Dad, you don't know anything. You don't know nothing. I'm sure that's the way she comes across.
She gets stronger in it.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't even, if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to say, so how'd you come to that conclusion? Well, what's your evidence for that? If you look at the surveys, and they are nerve-rattling, the vast majority of colleges, and in particular those colleges called the elite institutions, are wildly skewed against what many of you listening to this right now believe, not only morally, religiously, family-wise, politically, but in the very depths of the way you want to raise your kids, or you did raise your kids. Overwhelming, however they measure it, political affiliation, whether they ask questions about religious commitments, just overwhelming. We're not talking 60-40. We're talking 90-10, 95-5. Every survey I've seen. So what does this say? Well, it puts a parent in a situation to no longer assume that the college environment is there to give an education, a fair and open education on various viewpoints, the give and take of critical thinking. No longer. You cannot assume that. There are those colleges for Catholics that are very solidly Catholic, and there's more than a handful of them now, probably 20, 25. Those are good options. One of the decisions my wife and I made for our children who were capable of college, and this was, 15 years ago, we decided that we're not going to let you go away to college. We would lose all control over whatever you experience, whatever you choose. It's not a growing up experience so much anymore as a misshaping experience. That is just the way it is. This is not my opinion. It's overwhelming surveys. 50 to 85% of children, according to one survey, lose their faith in college. That ain't flipping a coin. That's more than flipping a coin. We didn't let them go away. My one son commuted through his master's degree. My daughter went to a local, very, very nice local college, Walsh University, very faithfully Catholic college, got her nursing degree. My one daughter, who is now a JAG lawyer in the Army, she went through ROTC. So we're kind of like Carl here. We had no influence over how she was going to be educated. She was completely independent, at least for the most part, and she was pretty solid. She was not easily influenced in the way she thinks. But that was our choice. I think it's risky, and most parents still do it. They go scope out colleges. Oh man, he really liked that college. What did he like about it? And what did he see? Well, it has a lot of trees, and it's not downtown, and has a nice environment. Now, one hillside's really nice. Now I'm being trivial, but the point is they can't really decide upon it because they don't know anything about the college. Now, maybe there are certain course degrees that they have to get at that college. I understand that. Technologically speaking, there are just certain things you can only get. But the 50% of more kids who get a bachelor's degree like his daughter in political science, could she have gone close to home? Now, Dad said, hey, she went away and she's being shaped. And will she come back to the way they think? Who knows? Who knows? I have an awful lot of people telling me they have 45-year-old daughters who just, since they went to college, just turned on pretty much everything that they were taught. And to this day, there are huge chasms in the belief systems between parents and kid, 45-year-old kid. So given that, that's a decision that the parents have to now make. And I've beaten this drum before on this program. You got to really watch about the college experience. Talk about this in, I think it's my book, Family Faith Under Fire. Because talk about Family Faith Under Fire, college experience is pretty good at setting a torch to what you most wanted to have your children believe as adults. The opinions, ideas, notions, and intellectual nuggets expressed on The Doctor Is In are not necessarily those of the management staff, call screeners, board operators, mother-in-laws, second cousins once removed, and parole officers of Ave Maria Radio. And any resemblance or close relationship thereof is purely coincidental and is not a reflection or indication that any of the aforementioned individuals are listening to the program or even like it. Thank you so much for joining me here. Dr. Ray Guarendi. Program Doctor Is In, Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Co-production of the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Some 400 to 500 stations. Sirius Satellite Channel 130. And all the apps out there. You can listen anywhere, any place, anytime. All kinds of ways. And also, where else can you listen? I think that's about it. Those stations are increasing, though. This is Look Back Friday. And just a couple more thoughts here on the whole college experience. College is not the morally safe environment for kids who were raised in homes that seek God. It's not. Depending upon the college, depending upon the major, there are certain majors in college that are wildly to the left of traditional moral views and beliefs. The kids get shaped. I'm going to have to spend all 9 minutes on this if you keep going. Andrew, come on. I'm on a roll. All right, let me look at it here. I'll do this, and then I'll maybe carry it after the break. But let me make a final point on college. You got to really think about it now. My suggestion is you consider where, generally close to home, or maybe the first 2 years you go to a local community college. Allow a little more maturation to take place living in your home. Okay. Enough said. I could say more. Let's talk to Bob from Ohio. Some concerns here about incipient Alzheimer's. What makes you think that you're on the edge of Alzheimer's?
I just can't, I can't remember things, and everything I try to do is a chore. I just tried to order some stuff online, and it just got all messed up, and I ended up having to make sure it was canceled because I didn't know what I did,
After you made the order, you later on realized I don't remember, I don't recall exactly what I ordered, what I did?
No, it just wouldn't work. All the buttons I was pushing, it just wasn't working. It wouldn't go through, and it said, re-enter, and then it said, use it, this number not accepted.
Is this something that is happening more frequently, that things you used to be able to do now are becoming a struggle?
Yes.
Can you give me a couple more examples?
Having people, send me emails and stuff now, because when they tell me something, within minutes, half hour, whatever, if I don't write it down, I don't remember. Sometimes it'll pop back in. I'm sitting there trying to remember. Sometimes it was like a couple minutes later, all of a sudden out of nowhere, it'll pop back. But most
how old
of the time,
are you?
I can't remember.
Bob, how old are you, sir? How old are you?
68.
58 or 68?
68.
68. Well, that's relatively young for the onset of late Alzheimer's. If it were early Alzheimer's, 50s and 60s is possible. I think the question becomes, there's a certain amount of memory retrieval that happens with age. We lose the ability to recall things as well as we used to. That's kind of normal aging. That's part of it. If you're confused about things that are technology, welcome to the club. I do the same thing. I get lost all over the place. I think the question for you is functioning on a day-to-day basis. For example, you go to the store, you get in your car, and you're not sure how to get back home. Has that happened?
No.
Okay. Or you put something in the microwave, you put the timer on, and you make sure that it's safe. It's not a piece of metal that you're putting in there. And it cooks well, and you can handle the microwave. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when it's done cooking, it's got a beeper that beeps, tell you that it's done. So I wouldn't forget. If I put it in there and it didn't have something like that, I'd probably forget that I put something in the microwave.
Well, I could do that too.
Find out later that it's in there cold. It's been sitting there for a couple hours.
You have a remote, and while you're watching TV, do you ever look at that remote and think, I'm not quite sure how to use this?
No, I can work a remote.
Okay. So
I'm not
here's
so good on.
Here's the thing to put your mind at ease, Bob. Here's what you do to put your mind at ease. You set up a little appointment either with your general practitioner or a neurologist. You'll go in and they'll give you certain quick tests, just some things to check your ability to recall, to check your ability to understand. Sometimes there's just a small example. They'll give you the clock test, and they'll say, okay, draw the face of a clock and then put that clock at 10 after 10. So they'll just give you some brief tests. They'll ask you some things. They'll ask you where you are. They'll ask you who the president is, a whole bunch of questions, and they'll give you a sense of, okay, you did okay. You did fine. So for you, the question becomes, is this just little here and there kind of, slip-ups, mental slip-ups, or is it the beginning of a pattern? And I think the way to determine that is get yourself to a physician, tell her what you're thinking about, what you're worried about, and that you would like some brief mental status exam. That's what it's called. And they'll check.
That's what I did a year ago.
And you passed it. You passed it, right?
Should I do it again?
Well, did you pass it then?
Yeah, a year ago they said the MRI showed there's nothing wrong with your brain. And
okay.
I did the little mental test, like you said, and they said, you did okay. You did fine.
All right.
And that was a year ago.
Well, chances are you're not going to plummet that much in a year. Okay, where to go with this? Obviously the tests, but I think one of the reasons why, and I'm going to get cut off by a break here, and Andrew warned me. He said, if you don't stop talking now about that previous college call, you're going to have to take this through the break. And that's okay, Andrew. I can do that. And the reason I can do that is because I really want to make comments about Alzheimer's. Not so much necessarily about Bob's situation, but certain things that happen in Alzheimer's is only one of 50-plus neurodegenerative disorders. It's the most common one. It probably accounts at least for 55% of all dementias. And it is a diagnosis that by and large is done posthumously. In other words, the person is dead and it's done on autopsy. So at this point, I'm going to bring up a few points commonly that can accompany the early stages of Alzheimer's. The doctor is in. I'm Dr. Ray Guarendi. I'm the doctor who is in as in present, not in as in cool. No, I was the president of the Latin club in high school and the astronomy club. So it gives you some indication of my coolness in high school. Now, I had talked prior to the break with Bob, and he was concerned about Alzheimer's. That's all that I had put up as a summary for this look-back call. So my initial assumption was that it was his wife, mother, someone close to him. But here it was his concern. And his concern was based upon the fact that he can't keep in his mind when people tell him something, he says, I forget it. Okay. Now, there's a certain amount of forgetfulness or memory retrieval problems that does occur in the aging of the brain. That happens. It's usually not pathological. I mean, I play trivia, and we have 2 minutes to answer the question. Well, if I had 9 minutes, I'd get it more often. It's that 2-minute retrieval thing that gets me. And fortunately, we got some younger people playing. That helps a lot. Given that, the early stages of Alzheimer can be scary for people because they can recognize that something is different. In Bob's case, he was nervous about his memory issues. And that's one of the early signs of just beginning Alzheimer's. It's true. He could have done this too. One of the other early signs is some personality changes. And he could have asked people that know him, am I any different? Am I more short-tempered? Am I less appropriate? Does it look like there's times when you say, what's with Dad? Where are you coming from with that one? Because I remember when my grandmother first started moving into Alzheimer's, that she would tell dirty jokes. And Grandma never told dirty jokes. Where's that one coming from? So that's something that Bob could have. Again, I didn't get into that in the call, but that's something that he could do. It's time, perhaps, as I suggested in the call, for another just a neurological, psychological assessment on his screening abilities. They give you short tests, mental competency tests, mental measurement tests, and they find out. That's true. If he's married, I didn't ask him this, obviously. It's not a therapy session. I couldn't get into all the details. Is he married? Ask his wife what she sees. Have I changed? Am I different? Am I less competent? Are you finding that? Now, it's one thing to have some memory retrieval issues. It's another to lose competence. I had a fellow tell me one time that he was very, very, very good with small engines. And one particular time, he took his mower apart to fix it, and he just looked at the pieces. And for that moment, he had no idea what to do. Or a lady told me once that she looked at her checkbook, and as she put in an entry, again, she got confused as to what to do with that entry. Or remotes. I asked Bob about remotes. Very commonly, somebody will say as they're moving into the early stages of Alzheimer's, they're looking at the remote. And I'm not really sure what exactly this button does, how to operate this. That kind of confusion. Okay. He didn't sound like he had any of that, so that's a good sign. But here's the other point I wanted to make. There was a lady in our church, and this just happened this recently. I had thought mistakenly that she was battling cancer. So as we were leaving Mass, I asked her, said, how are your treatments going? And she said, I got one more out of 15. And I thought, okay, all right, so I got that right. She's dealing with cancer. I said, is it a certain type of chemo? She goes, no. I've been diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. Now, she was not very old. That's why I didn't suspect it. She looked like she was in her 60s, early 60s maybe even. She said, I've been diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. I said, you're getting treatments? Yes. What kind of treatments? Injections. What are these injections supposed to do? They're supposed to break up the plaque, the amyloid proteins that clump together is one of the neurological complications of Alzheimer's. It says they're supposed to break up the plaque, these protein clumps. I said, really? I said, this is cutting edge. She goes, it is. She said, it's very cutting edge. Now, I didn't have enough time to talk to her and ask her more details. I don't know if it's experimental. I don't know if she is part of a group, a clinical group, where they're doing research on this, or this is something that is becoming somewhat routine. I don't know. Alzheimer's has had no cure other than certain drugs that can sort of slow down the progress in the earlier stages of Alzheimer's. So I thought that was fascinating. And those of you who have relatives, perhaps in the earlier stages of Alzheimer's, you might want to look into that, see what it is. I wouldn't even know. It was so new to me that I wouldn't even know what you would search. Possibly treatments for Alzheimer's, injections for Alzheimer's. I don't know. But I was totally surprised about that. And Alzheimer's is increasing in frequency. The main reason? Because we're increasing in age. The longer you live, the single biggest indicator of developing Alzheimer's is age. I saw a survey once that said approximately 50% of people age 85 have some kind of mild cognitive impairment. Now, mild cognitive impairment may be what Bob is dealing with. And the good news is mild cognitive impairment doesn't always deteriorate into Alzheimer's. It's only a certain percentage of that happens. But there can be that low level of neurological complications that make you feel a little less competent than you used to be. All right, just a little brief primer on Alzheimer's. I'll be back.
Today's programming on Ave Maria Radio is brought to you in part by a gift from our day sponsor, Ralph Martin.
I have a really wonderful announcement to make today. I've written a new book. It's called The Coming Judgment, Are We Ready? And it's just been published. It's just out. I'd really like to encourage you to consider getting it. You can get it at renewalministries.net or on Amazon or any one of a number of other places.
Check out his new book, The Coming Judgment, Are We Ready? Now available at renewalministries.net.
Get ready. Something big is happening in Brighton. The Shamrock Festival at St. Patrick Catholic School on Orndorff Drive is this weekend, Friday through Sunday. Enjoy carnival rides, games, live entertainment, food, a beer tent, and fun for all ages. Saturday, the Knights of Columbus Center will be at 4:30. Sunday, outdoor mass at 11 a.m. at St. Patrick's School behind Meyer in Brighton. For more on the Shamrock Festival, visit stpatrickcatholicparish.org.
I might have gone to church, at Christmas time, gradually quit going. It's not as scary as I thought it was. It's a much more warm and open place, and God really is about love. It's not about the rules and the things that I remember as a young child. It really is about the love that God has for each one of us that's so deep and wonderful.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
Ever get asked one of those tough questions, like, do Catholics worship Mary? And in that moment, you freeze? Truthfully, the Catholic AI app gives you answers in seconds rooted in scripture, tradition, and the magisterium. Whether you're navigating a tough conversation, deepening your faith, or looking for daily spiritual guidance, Truthfully helps you know, live, and defend the Catholic faith. Truthfully can be found in the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's Truthfully, Truthly.
I appreciate Andrew Kruchek doing that, as he saw me kind of confessing that I was not a cool kid in high school, and he plays cool music. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. Okay, look back Friday, last call to come in here. Let's see how much time I got. Oh, Andrew, you know what? I'm looking at the length of those calls, and I'm looking at the clock. There's no way. I'd have about 30 seconds to comment. Now, some people might be happy that I only have 30 seconds to comment, but I think I better just do what I normally do. Now, C.S. Lewis does not necessarily write me anymore because he's long past. But I would usually, my wife got me a calendar many years ago of C.S. Lewis quotes from his various books, publications. This one, we might think, now this comes from Mere Christianity. We might think that God wanted simply obedience to a set of rules, whereas he really wants people of a particular sort. Now, this is kind of Lewis's language, the way he phrases it. But think about it. In our Lord's time, the religious leaders were obedient to a set of rules, some that they developed. And yet, in their obedience, and you could argue that some of them were probably very, very good in obeying those rules. They stayed right within the lines. But our Lord chastised them because he was saying, you don't realize the spirit, the heart of what those rules are for. You're not the kind of people that you should be. That makes a lot of sense. On one hand, yeah, I think I want to follow our Lord's teachings through his church. I got that part. And in many respects, that may be the easier part. The harder part for me is being a certain way. You know, there's no rule that says, okay, if you do A, B, and C, you're charitable. Well, yeah, okay, that's a start. There are certain charitable things you can do, but more vaguely, how does my personality, how does who I am reflect what God would want me to be? You know, would somebody say, wow, he's easy to get along with, or he's tolerant, or he's kind, or he's forgiving, or he's complimentary, whatever that might be, to more or less capture one's personality. And I've often thought that. It's interesting. Now, many of you probably get frustrated with others, or maybe even yourself, when you see that they're very, very good at following religious prescriptions. Perhaps they're very liturgical, they're very devotional, heavy devotional. They know all kinds of stuff about how to act religiously in terms of devotions and practices. Okay, got that. But you find them either hard to get along with, or critical, prideful, arrogant. And so the personality is the part that is really the hardest to evolve, I think. I've often said this. I said, it's much easier for me to pray a decade of the rosary than to forgive an obnoxious person. It's much easier to do that. If I pray the decade of the rosary, I can feel pretty good about myself. And I'll pray a decade. As a matter of fact, I prayed it in Aramaic while I levitated, above broken glass. Yeah. Extra credit. But that aspect of my personality, which is what Lewis looks at, he wants people of a particular sort. The kind of person that can be more easily recognized as a follower of Christ. Nobody knows 100% if I'm faithful to my wife. They don't know that. They can assume it. They can think it. They can say, well, we have no evidence that he's not. But they can see my demeanor around my wife. They can see what I treat her like in very subtle ways now, very subtle ways. So I can give myself satisfaction and say, well, I'm a faithful husband. I am a faithful husband. I don't do that kind of stuff. Okay, that's good. That's real good. But am I a husband of a particular sort to my wife? That's the difference. And that's the harder part. That is truly the harder part. That's why sometimes on this program I will say, well, is this person that does this, are they Christian? Oh, yes, they're very faithfully Catholic. Yeah, daily Mass goers. Okay. So daily Mass goers, how is this translating into the way they treat this other person, or the fact that they won't talk to this other person, or the fact they've written this person off. Not unusual for an older person to call this program and say, my daughter hasn't talked to us in 3 years. I said, so she still go to church? Oh, yeah, she goes to church regularly. Huh. Yeah. She's following that rule. But she's not being a person of a particular sort. Interesting. I find that fascinating. We might think that God wanted simply obedience to a set of rules, whereas he really wants people of a particular sort. In other words, his ways infuse who you are. Friend one time said in Bible study, why doesn't God just come down and tell us how he wants us to behave? Give us the rules. I can follow the rules. I said, yeah, you can follow the rules. So did the religious leaders. Where's your motive? Where's your heart? Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In on this particular variant. Look back Friday, good Lord permitting. I'll see you on Monday, ePerson Monday. Thank Andrew Kruchek for all the editing work he does over there at Ave Maria Radio. And I thank you for keeping me company. Walk with God and ask him, Lord, how can I be a person of a particular sort?
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.